Welcome to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, editor-in-chief of thenationalpulse.com. We've got a great show for you today. Well, according to geneticist Peter Foster of the University of Cambridge, the first novel coronavirus outbreaks may have occurred as early as September 2019, meaning we're fast approaching the one-year anniversary of this virus that's plunged the world into unprecedented economic, social, cultural, and political chaos. Although consensus views gravitate towards November for the first case of the Chinese Communist Party's virus, we know that consensus has often been wrong about this pandemic. So many of the prescriptions from genius scientists in Dr. Anthony Fauci's circles have been proven farcical. You don't need a mask. You do need a mask. You should stay at home, but you can also go on random Tinder hookups. We need all the ventilators in the world immediately. They're now attacking Dr. Peter Navarro for, guess what? The US having too many ventilators. Almost the entire establishment, governmental and media response to this pandemic has been a farce, as the responses of the experts always are. And there's a big stonking elephant in the room at the same time that very few people seem to want to address. Where the heck did this virus come from anyway? We seem to have abandoned that question pretty quickly, leaving the official Chinese Communist Party line about someone eating a bat soup or getting too close to a pangolin as the mainstream thesis. Those of you who watch this show regularly will know I'm no conspiracy theorist, but when the theory is so weak, questions have to be asked. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo understands that. He's been asking questions from the get-go, and even discussing the theory that the virus was in fact man-made rather than the end result of somebody's poor luncheon choices. Certainly the Chinese Communist Party didn't want the original genetic sequence of the virus to be released. We covered that back in April on the National Pulse website. They scrubbed everything, remember? Secretary of State Pompeo noted, and I quote, "The CCP has still not shared the virus sample from inside of China, with the outside world making it impossible to track the disease's evolution." He specifically referred to the international obligation to share viral samples and the policing of such matters according to the international health regulations of 2005. Let's hear from Secretary Pompeo from back in April.
Part of this reform further mandates that a state party, that would include China, shall continue to communicate to WHO timely, accurate, and sufficiently detailed public health information. That is, there's an ongoing obligation. Even after the CCP did notify the WHO of the coronavirus outbreak, China didn't share all of the information it had. Instead, it covered up how dangerous the disease is. It didn't report sustained human-to-human transmission for a month until it was in every province inside of China. It censored those who tried to warn the world. It ordered a halt to testing of new samples, and it destroyed existing samples. The CCP still has not shared the virus sample from inside of China with the outside world, making it impossible to track the disease's evolution. Not making a legal determination here today on China's adherence to the IHRs, but the World Health Organization's regulatory arm clearly failed during this pandemic. I'd also note that when countries adopted these new rules in 2007, we also gave the Director General of the WHO encouragement and the ability to go public when a member country wasn't following those rules. And that didn't happen in this case either. That's why we continue to insist this is an ongoing requirement for transparency and openness according to the WHO rules, and the WHO has responsibility to continue to enforce them today. This transparency and getting it right is critical to saving lives today and in the future.
Well, Secretary of State Pompeo can be a little dry in the delivery, but it's so important, every single part of what he said there. These international health regulations state, quote, "Each state party shall assess events occurring within its territory. Each state party shall notify the WHO by the most efficient means of communication available and within 24 hours of assessment of public health information. of all events which may constitute a public health emergency of international concern within its territory in accordance with the decision instrument, as well as any health measure implemented in response to those events. Quote, if a state party has evidence of an unexpected or unusual public health event within its territory, irrespective of origin or source, which may constitute a public health emergency of international concern, it shall provide to the WHO all relevant public health information. End quote. The Chinese Communist Party didn't do that. And for some reason, nobody in the establishment media is asking why. If the virus had originated in Russia, we would have probably invaded by now, or at least the Washington Post would have wanted us to. President Trump, as we know, is not a warmongering president. In fact, he's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by a Norwegian member of parliament who said, quote, Trump has broken a 39-year-old streak of American presidents either starting a war or bringing the United States into international armed conflict. The last president to avoid doing so was Peace Prize laureate Jimmy Carter. And while President Trump clearly isn't the warmonger the media wishes he was, he announced a further drawdown of U.S. troops from the Middle East today. He is absolutely a China hawk, or should I say a Chinese Communist Party hawk. The CCP is without a doubt the most malevolent force in modern history, and it is a testament to the moral integrity of Secretaries of State Mike Pompeo and his boss that the State Department today launched a new web portal documenting the human rights abuses of the CCP. That's something that Joe Biden and his Democratic colleagues have not only been incredibly quiet about, but also complicit in their time during office. I thought the left was supposed to be interested in human rights. Oh, that's right. Only when it suits them. Our first guest today is Dr. Li Meng Yan, a former virologist and immunologist at the Hong Kong School of Public Health who left Hong Kong for the US in late April to inform the world that the CCP knew of COVID-19. We'll get to Dr. Yang in just a moment. Well, Dr. Li Meng Yan left the Hong Kong for the United States in April to inform the world of what was really going on with COVID-19, the novel coronavirus. And Dr. Yan joins us now on the show. Dr. Yan, thank you so much for being here with us today on the National Pulse. We're incredibly grateful to have you here.
Hi, Raheem. Thank you for having me.
So I want to start at the top here because you've actually got a couple of reports that you're working on right now that I think are really going to shock people into waking up to what the truth is behind this virus. As I said in the opening monologue there, we've been nearly a year now. People saying it maybe went back to September, the first cases of symptoms related to the novel coronavirus. So I want to just reset with you for the audience on the National Pulse. It's some of the same audience from the War Room show in the morning, but some a different audience. I want them to understand your story, who you are, where you came from, and why you felt it necessary to step forward.
Okay, so first I want to mention that even for several couple of hours, it's not long enough for me to introduce all these things. So here I just will briefly introduce some part about me at the beginning. First, I was in the University of Hong Kong School of Public Health in the WHO influenza and now the new coronavirus reference lab. I'm the postdoc fellow there working on the virology, immunology, and also the vaccine development. Since the December of 2019, December of 2019, there were novel unknown pneumonia come out in Wuhan. And my lab, my supervisors, Professor Malik Paris and Professor Liu Peng, together with some other very famous professors, they are the WHO consultant and also the top coronavirus expert and also the emerging disease expert. Because lack of information from China government, my supervisor Liu Peng directly issued me the secret investigation to reach out to mainland hospitals and authorities using my personal network because I get my medical degree and doctorate degree and also my PhD degree in mainland China. And I'm the only one among them can speak in Mandarin to get information for their reference to Hong Kong government and of course later for WHO. That's why from 31 December last year, I get into this investigation and all my results report to Liu Peng and also Malik Paris immediately. But no action was performed and everyone around me, when they know this, although they are the expert, they still pretend nothing happened because China government forced everyone to keep silent and collaborate with the government. So that's how my story begins.
But you, Dr. Yan, you didn't remain quiet. What was it that spurred you on to take action here? While, as you say, some of your colleagues, and other people working on this thing did remain silent.
Because from the beginning of my investigation, I also get a feedback from China, different CDC like headquarters or local CDC or Chinese doctors or people in the relative field that we should not release such information. And they told me it's because first I represented of the WHO reference lab. And also we have personal relationships as alumni, friend or something. So I can get this information, but everyone wants that if you release it out, you are in trouble, I will be in trouble. And also back to the 16th January, when the second time I was issued for this investigation for further things, my supervisor Liu Peng clearly warned me that if you cross the red line, you will get disappeared. And when I report to him that there were human-to-human transmission, of course, and there were more patients covered up in China, and the situation is worse than the early in the January, and also there is no clear evidence about intermediate host. All these things happen, and Liu asked me to keep silence. And I realized that at that time it's an urgent moment. People should not still be, get away from the fact. People need to know it because all the patients, all the doctors, nurses, and the relative people, and even innocent people, they are exposed to the very high risk, the danger, and it is Chinese New Year time. Wuhan, as maybe the biggest transportation hub in the world, will get millions of people transport from here to other places, and even all over the world. And also, besides, I have my own intelligence since I have worked in that WHO lab for 5 years, and I'm quite close to Professor Malik Harris and even Liu Peng. Finally, I understand what happened, and I decide if they are not the one who delivers the truth, I have to be the one who delivers truth to the world. That's why 17th January, I contact Mr. Luder through Twitter, and he is the one I think at that time will be the only one I can trust and can contact efficiently to deliver this message out to warn people. And 19th January, in his broadcast, he delivered my 5 points, which are all verified now, to warning the world.
Dr. Yan, I want to ask you, we've got to go to a quick break in just a minute, but just in the minute before we go to the break, I wanted to ask you, you said if you stepped out of line, you would be disappeared. That's what the threat that was made, or warning that came your way. Are you currently fearful for your safety as a result of having stepped out of line?
At this moment, I think I'm safe under some protection, but I can tell you that even since I left Hong Kong without exposed into the public, the China government already recruits their national power through the policemen and the state security and the University of Hong Kong, and also the cyber military to attack me in my personal life among my friends and also to the public. There are many evidence online. Even now, they try to describe me as a hamster keeper and said I'm not nobody, just come out after July and deny what I have done to push all the things to the right direction from the January.
Well, after the break, Dr. Yan, I'll ask you why you think the official line, the Chinese Communist Party's line about this, the intermediary, the pangolin or the bat soup or whatever it is not credible. I want to get Dr. Yan to respond to questions on that, and maybe explain a little bit for the audience that doesn't know what gain of function is. This is the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam. My guest is Dr. Yan, whistleblower against the CCP virus. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, here broadcasting live to you all from downtown in Washington, D.C. Later on in the program, we'll have Bill McGinley, former White House Cabinet Secretary, joining us to talk about the mail-in ballots and what people on the political right in the United States need to do to make sure that this election is secure and is fair. For now, we have Dr. Yan, who is an incredibly brave whistleblower who's come forward and is saying that the CCP virus, or as we know it, the novel coronavirus, COVID-19, whatever you want to call it, is manufactured. It was manufactured by the Chinese Communist Party. Dr. Yan, that's a very, very strong charge, and people will ask, why is that credible? Why is that a credible charge you're making?
Yeah, so I know most of people cannot accept this fact, and it's too evil for us to understand. But what I can tell you is, as what even China government and their colleague WHO or others people in the scientific world claim that they want us to use scientific evidence to show it to the world. Yeah, now I have finished my first report with my scientist team, and this one will be published to the world very soon because it's now in the final step now. We can use the detailed evidence in scientific way in the reference and also point out their smoking guns created by themselves to let people understand why this cannot be someone come from nature, why those animals are not intermediate hosts, they are innocent, why this one is enhanced just used to target to human, and why it is so well adapted to human when it just come into the society as a very novel pathogen. All these things, we have very strong, very solid first-hand scientific evidence. And trust me, this one will be published very soon.
Well, we'll be very excited to see it when it comes out because, as you say, the Western media, the entirety of the Western world sort of just has accepted the Chinese Communist Party's line on all of this, which is bizarre to me. We often talk about how the world couldn't fathom the level of evil that was being perpetrated in the 1930s and 40s. And you look at that and you compare that to what we see taking place today, and you think, oh, I now understand how so many people didn't quite get what was going on back then at the time. And it's because of this same, as you said, we just cannot believe that this level of evil would necessarily be perpetuated upon the entirety of the world this virus has hit. So I want to ask you this question as a result of all of this that you've gotten into here, the manufactured element of it. Let's suppose that you're correct and this is manufactured, and I'm sure that the evidence is going to be in your report for the world to make up their own minds over. Was it intentionally released at this point in your estimation, or was it accidentally released?
Let's see a whole picture from the early beginning, recruiting the whole national power and the international scientific power, international organization power to work together, cover up the truth, twist the fact, tell people this is not human-to-human transmission, this is come from animal, this is something not pandemic at all, and no need to wear masks, hydroxychloroquine doesn't work, all of this thing together with the fabricated RATJ13 virus, which is very, very famous now, arised by bad woman, Professor Zheng Lishi in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and quickly accepted by the whole scientific world. And later on the pangolin virus, which is also fixed now even to the Yunnan 6 minor cases, which is popular and well accepted by the Western media and promoted. So all these things get together, and let's see who would spend so much time and so much cost to try to create this story to people, tell you this is something come from nature, even if it is from the lab, it may be because of the good purpose to study it from Yunnan and then accidentally leak. So all the things together with my evidence, and they can support it, of course, show people that even without more intelligence, you will understand that this is something very evil and definitely did it on purpose.
So what
and
is...
also I will
Go ahead.
Yeah, so also I have my rich experiment working in the even animal experiment in the P3 lab in the WHO reference lab. Actually, our lab is a P3 plus level and even can handle some P4 level experiment. So as my experience, I can guarantee that there is no way for the virus come from stay in the P3 lab to run out like this by accident.
Dr. Yan, we've got about 2 minutes left in this segment here. I just want to ask you as basic as you can make it for the audience, and especially for me. What is gain of function, and are there any legitimate applications for gain of function?
Actually, gain of function, I mean, just literally you can understand it. When you try to study something new, you don't want to reduce their function or just focus on the character of itself. You want to see whether you can add more function on that. That is called gain of function. So come back to the virology. If you just study something, you get that is not gain of function. If you make it as vaccine, that is attenuate, reduce their bad function. But if you try to make it more lethal, it's like when you had a stone and you sharpen it and become a hammer or become an axe, that is called gain of function. Or you make something become a gun which can shoot you, that is called gain of function, because the function for the virus itself, it doesn't help, but it finally obtain it after your procedure. So basically, back to 2014 in US, NIH already suspended this kind of gain of function project. But somehow, until the 2017, although there were some other countries like China still doing the gain of function experiment in their place or in secret, finally NIH decided to reopen this kind of funding and even collaborate with Hong Kong, my lab, and also the China and many other labs to continue such study. Yeah. For ethics, we still have a space to discuss it, but you should understand this kind of gain of function experiment always need to be under the very strict supervision. But this kind of supervision never can be true in the country like China without enough law.
Dr. Yan, we've got to go to a quick break here. Just stick around. I want to come back and ask you about specifically the distinction between the Chinese people and the Chinese Communist Party. We'll be right back. Well, moments away, Bill McGinley will talk about the mail-in ballot process and the security of the election here in the United States. Obviously, massive global ramifications will take place because of that and because of what the Democrats are planning to do. You've heard about it before. You actually probably heard about it first on the National Pulse website. That's thenationalpulse.com. And if you want to support our work, that's thenationalpulse.com/support or fundrealnews.com. Speaking of real news, we have Dr. Yan with us. Dr. Yan is a whistleblower who is bringing real news all around the world, despite the Chinese Communist Party's attempts to silence, unperson, malign, and abuse her because of her braveness in stepping forward and talking about this virus. Dr. Yan, there's a lot to fit into this segment, but I just have one question for you because I know, and I've seen you talk about this before, the distinction between ordinary Chinese people who yearn for freedom and the Chinese Communist Party. The audience is so interested to hear about, the deplorables of China, the Lao Baixing.
Okay, so Chinese people, really innocent Chinese people, or even all the other people controlled by China Communist Party, there is no freedom for us to stand out, to do the peaceful protest, to argue, to tell the truth through the media, or even among the relative or friends. We are under very terrible and unbelievable that kind of supervision. I can tell you one example is recently there are some songs online. It's like take down the CCP or the other news songs, which spreading very well through the internet, and because people want to hear it, want to listen to that. But then our government also established a new police station, which is patrolling the music, and there are photos online even. So please tell me how to patrol the music. This is very hilarious. With Chinese people under supervision through different type of the structures. Like when you are a student, you get surveillance by your teachers and by your classmates, and even your parents under supervision of your classmates' parents. And if you are at home, your relatives or the other people you contact through WeChat, of course, WeChat is a very useful tool, and TikTok is one for their censorship and surveillance. And also even Alipay, Alibaba, this kind of website, all can record your activities. And everything they think is something improper, they will directly trigger the auto surveillance system, and later the manpower, that kind of surveillance system. And sometimes a very little mistake you made by accident will make them feel very sensitive, and you will be bring to the police station, talk to them, and maybe face to the worst punishment. Very well-known example is like Dr. Li Wenliang faced in Wuhan for the SARS-CoV-2 information. And also people can see how Hong Kong people get suffered through the Hong Kong movement back to from last year until now. And also we can take myself as example. For example, I deliver the message, keep delivering the message to reveal the whole fake story, fake things about the COVID-19 truth through Muda's media. Although I cannot expose my identity, and Mr. Muda helped me to deliver the message from January even until now. But my government kept tracing who's the one behind, because I was the first one, as I said, even in 19th January, told people 5 facts, which is first, there is cover up of the COVID-19 by China government. Second is this virus is human-to-human transmission, definitely. And the third one is this virus is highly mutant, and it will lead to the outbreak if no quick and necessary, the efficient control is conducted immediately. And also there is no intermediate host, and the seafood market is just the smoking screen. And also the final one is most important one. This virus is a lab-modified virus based on China military owned and discovered and owned the Zhoushan bat coronavirus DC45 and ZXC21. So they are the lab-made ones. So all these facts, and later we are the first one in the world to tell the hydroxychloroquine will be useful on 29th January and 3rd February after Shi Zhengli's RATG13 virus paper published in Nature. I'm the first one explains this is fabricated one through Mr. Lu De. And later when China government announced that general chain will lead to the successful vaccine, both in activity side or style of the 85 vector-based particle vaccine. These are all the, the story. There is no successful vaccine from them. All these things make our government very, very angry. So they actually trapped me and...
Dr. Yan, we've got 2 minutes here, and I just have some pretty quick yes or no questions, quick fire questions for you. Do you think there will be a vaccine available in the United States by election day, by November the 3rd?
From the information we get at this moment, I'm not the optimistic one, because although there are still some data we haven't seen, right? But as we see that the problem already come out in China and even in UK, and there is most of the companies, they are using the traditional technique. So they don't know what really happened to this virus. They won't understand how to make the real vaccine.
Yeah. Dr. Yan, I just want to ask you as well, if you were sitting down with the President or Secretary of State Pompeo, we've got about 1 minute left here, what would be the most important thing you could impart to them, actions that they need to take today?
Okay, first, the origins of the COVID-19 is the most important thing. Understand what happened in the lab, who get involved. Not only the Chinese scientists in China, there are also the scientists from different countries in all over the world who collaborating with them. The scientific world who is conducting this kind of information censorship all need to get investigation. Some key person, I can tell you the name now. Professor Malik Paris, who is a top one coronavirus expert in the world and also my supervisor in the University of Hong Kong WHO lab, who immediately retired after I left. And also the China Military Microbiology Institute, the director, Professor Cao Wuchun, and also like the bad woman Zheng Li Shi, also their collaborators. All this, because you can read my scientific report.
All right. Dr. Yan, we are at the end here, but we're really grateful for you joining us. Your report is going to be out soon. We will make sure to feature that very prominently on the National Pulse website. We hope you'll come back and talk to us here about it. We can't wait to have you back here and on the War Room. Dr. Yan, great hero. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be right back with more National Pulse in just a second. Incredible stuff there from Dr. Yan, and from the incredible to the more incredible, Bill McGinley, the former White House Cabinet Secretary, joining us on the National Pulse now. He's gone through the farm team for the National Pulse show, which is the War Room, several times. We're always grateful to have Bill on the War Room, but I wanted to have Bill on one-on-one here to talk us through some of this fix, some of this steal that looks like it's going to take place at this upcoming election. They're already laying the groundwork. We've explained to you, we broke the story on the National Pulse over a month ago about the Transition Integrity Project, who they're linked to, where their money comes from, who's involved, where they give money to, and so on and so forth. But the question is enough being done on the Republican side to counteract the influence, whether it's in the media and popular culture of the narrative being set? The front page of The Nation magazine has the president holding on to a podium, grasping for dear life, saying, "I'm not going anywhere." But is it really President Trump who is going to dispute the results of this election? I say no, but I wonder what Bill McGinley thinks. Bill, thank you so much for joining us today on the National Pulse.
Thanks for having me, Raheem. Great to be here.
I always have to watch it very closely because in the mornings I often almost say welcome to the National Pulse. In the afternoon I sit here and almost say welcome to War Room Pandemic. So at one point we're just going to have to merge it all. War Room, National Pulse, Pandemic. Bill, tell me, do you think enough is currently being done on our side to combat what is clearly, to me, a means by which to undermine the integrity of the election? They give it away in their name. The Transition Integrity Project. The Democrats always do the complete opposite of what they claim to do. They totally always just project. So they're the ones trying to undermine the integrity. They say there's going to be street violence. What's our answer to all this?
Look, I think the Transition Integrity Project, I think the Harvard professor who wrote a op-ed in the Washington Post talking about how Speaker Pelosi should refuse to seat Republican members if she wants to play constitutional hardball in case the election goes to the House of Representatives. The Atlantic story, which has now been discredited and disputed by at least 19 Trump administration officials who have gone on the record, who said that they were on the trip and never heard the words that the Atlantic spoke. This is a coordinated comms assault. This is something they're creating a blue illusion to try and take their plans and project it onto President Trump. If you read the Transition Integrity Project report that they released to the press and the op-eds that they're doing, what they're doing is they're taking the garden variety type of recount scenarios where neither candidate concedes an election if it's extremely close. The one who's on top is going to talk about how if you're the incumbent, is going to continue to govern and work for the American people. If you're the challenger, you say, we're confident that we're going to be prevailing in the end, and we're going to start with our transition. And what they're doing is they're weaponizing it. And you saw from the Daily Beast reporting the other day where they said that there was a conference call with over 50 organizations kind of game planning this out, but also laying plans for what, in their words, not ours, about how they were going to take to the streets to try and dispute whatever's going to happen on election night, and their advocacy that Joe Biden should never concede this election. Look, this is not normal. What we need to do is we need to understand America is a resilient nation. America has the processes and the institutions in place that can handle this type of election. We've held elections during a civil war. We've held elections during a world war, a couple of world wars. We held them during the Vietnam War. We've held them during periods of civil unrest, but also wartime in America. And we don't have wartime in America right now, right? In the garden variety sense. Right. We can get through this. America is a resilient nation, and those institutions are in place to be able to handle this. And so we need to tune out the blue illusion, and people need to focus on the policies of the candidates. They need to compare and contrast, Joe Biden, who you put a lid on his campaign yesterday morning at 8:10 in the morning with less than 60 days to go until an election, versus President Trump, who was in Florida and North Carolina talking to the people about his vision for a second term. I think this is important for people to remember. That everything is in your hands, right? This is in the hands of the American people. Own your vote, right? Tune this out. Democracy is a participatory process. You need to understand your state's voting rules. You need to request an absentee ballot if you don't think that you're going to be able to make it to the polling places on election day. If there's a chance that you're going to not be able to stand in line for long lines, because you should plan for that. If that's the case, you should request an absentee ballot extremely early. You should track it and make sure you get it. When you get it, you need to take the time to read the instructions and complete it carefully and completely and accurately. You need to make sure that your voter registration is up to date and that you're registered to vote. And you need to submit this ballot early so that it can make it in and be counted on election day. This is about the American people, and the American people are not going to stand for this type of skullduggery.
Yeah, I think that's right. Bill, we're going to go to a break in about 2 minutes, but I want to ask you how you think the campaign is going. I look at images from North Carolina and images from Florida. I hear the crowd chanting, we love you" at the president last night. And then you look at the other side and you look
of war and peace. For this reason, candidates for president owe the American people a specific list of individuals they consider for the United States Supreme Court. 4 years ago, I announced my first list of highly qualified candidates and promised to fill Justice Scalia's vacant seat from among those names. And just days after my inauguration, I kept that promise when I nominated Judge Neil Gorsuch. And as you know, he has been very spectacular. A year later, I nominated, and the Senate confirmed, another outstanding justice, Brett Kavanaugh. By the end of my first term, we will have confirmed a record number of federal judges, over 300, all of whom will faithfully uphold our Constitution as written. What has always made America exceptional is our reverence for the impartial rule of law. People have come from all over the world to pursue.
This committee, Schiff, is now asking this person to testify in front of Congress. We've got another impeachment on our hands, ladies and gentlemen, breaking right here, right now on the National Pulse. I'll get Bill McGinley to weigh in on that after we come back from the break. I'm Raheem Kassam. Head over to fundrealnews.com in the break. Support our work. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the National Pulse. We're joined by Bill McGinley. Where does the time go, by the way? Between great guests like Dr. Yan and Bill McGinley, this hour goes very, very quickly, and we're just incredibly grateful for AVN, the America's Voice team, and the production staff for putting this all together, making sure we have a great show every single day here at 3 p.m. on America's Voice. Make sure you're telling your friends. Download the Pluto app, download the America's Voice app. Don't miss a single show. Follow the National Pulse on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to the channels. Turn all the notifications on, because I can tell you as we get closer and closer to this election, the big tech giants are going to do all they can to stop you getting real news, stop you getting real information from real sources and real guests like Bill McGinley. Bill, I wrote an article this weekend about the mail-in voting process and how other countries have been plagued by it, not least my own in the United Kingdom, which started proper large-scale mail-in voting in earnest in 2001 under the Labour government, under Tony Blair's stewardship, and we saw masses of voter fraud. The Council of Europe, a globalist entity, weighed in to say that our system was incredibly vulnerable to postal voting fraud. We had several judges in the United Kingdom calling it a banana republic style process. Sir Eric Pickles, former cabinet member, actually issued a long report showing how postal voting was being defrauded in certain areas of the country, especially where ethnic minorities resided in large numbers, and how certain bullies in those communities would force people to fill out mail-in ballots and hand them over, in some cases even to the candidate themselves to deliver to the election official. So, Bill, lessons from abroad, do they count here in the United States, or did I just waste my Saturday?
You did not waste your Saturday. I think those are useful case studies so that people understand what can happen if a system goes off the rails. But I've always said my focus is more on the election administration side than on the voter fraud side, because I think that's the real vulnerability that we're facing in 2020. We've got a lot of states that are plussing up their absentee ballot programs and or trying to create in a very short time period mail-in voting programs that haven't been tested. And these county registrars, these secretaries of state, they don't have the resources. They're going to have a shortage of volunteers, because a lot of the volunteers who actually count the ballots are typically retirees who are the most vulnerable in society to the virus. And we saw this in a number of primaries where the poll workers just weren't showing up, in large part because they were concerned about the virus. It's why it's incredibly important that if you're a young, healthy individual and you want to participate in the process, you should volunteer as a poll worker, meaning working for the county or the state to help man the process so that the machinery of democracy can work. This is incredibly important stuff. It's a civic duty. It's good for America. It's good for the process. We need to have the bodies that can help process these ballots properly to make sure that we don't have any chicanery going on in the process with some of the examples that you pulled from the other countries, but also to make sure that we can get a quick and accurate count. We're going to have an extended time period where some ballots in a number of states are going to be, it's going to take a while to count them. And, Pennsylvania seems to be one of the states at the top of the list. Politico ran an article the other day talking about how the Democratic governor had a conference call with a bunch of Democratic officials in Philadelphia to say, we can't be the state that holds up the results. Well, the first question that I had after reading that article was, where was the Republican on the call? Right. Where was the Sunshine Act notice? Why wasn't there any transparency on this? This is the type of election administration stuff that doesn't give people confidence. Transparency is the key for fair and accurate elections. If both parties are involved and they're able to observe the process, then you have greater confidence in the process. When it's done behind closed doors, all it does is fuel suspicions, and then the election officials wonder why people are questioning the decisions that they made.
Well, the market took a slight dip just moments ago when this new whistleblower complaint was announced. Looks to be another impeachment-style process being kicked off by Congressman Adam Schiff with relation to a Department of Homeland Security employee. We'll obviously get into that over the course of the rest of the day and on the War Room Pandemic show tomorrow morning. It does seem like, Bill, we're going to have to reprise our War Room impeachment hats, our War Room impeachment roles. That's clearly what they're setting up here. But the question has to be asked, is why right now are they pulling out all of their October surprises?
I've always had a theory about campaigns, and that is the other side's really going to prounce when the other side is being extremely effective. So it's kind of the doctrine of effective speech. If somebody is delivering a good message, if somebody is actually doing a good ground game, they're going to do whatever they can to try and knock you off message and try and make accusations so that your focus is not on where it needs to be, which is going to be registering voters, turning out the votes, making sure those ballots get in, and making sure the election infrastructure is there to conduct a fair and open election. What you're seeing now is you're seeing basically a coordinated hit on the president, on Republicans, to try and knock them off message and try and drudge stuff up. We saw this during impeachment, right? How the Democrats were holding things behind closed doors and down in the basement. How they refused to give Republicans an opportunity to call their own witnesses and put on their case in a meaningful way, and how the whole charade failed Nancy Pelosi's test that she talked about for almost 2 years. It has to be bipartisan. It has to be compelling. I'll be surprised if they go down this road again, but everybody's right to have their spidey senses tingling when they start seeing something like this post-Labor Day.
I warned you about the Transition Integrity Project, Bill, and I'm warning you this time. There's another impeachment coming down. It's the wording. It's the wording in the articles, the wording in the complaint that gives it away as far as I'm concerned. But we'll get into studying it later today. Bill, I just want to thank you again. Tell our audience where they can follow you for the day-to-day Bill McGinley thoughts.
Sure. I am on Twitter at WJ McGinley, and that's WJMCGINLEY.
Bill McGinley there. Thank you so much. And Nick, our producer here and one of our managing team at the National Pulse, didn't know that Bill was short for William earlier on when looking for your Twitter handle. He said, "Is Bill on Twitter?" I said, "What's another word for Bill?" And he finally got it. But bless him, he'll get there in the end. Bill McGinley there. Thank you once again. Right, this is the National Pulse, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back with you tomorrow at 3 p.m. As usual, the president will probably interrupt this show as well, but we're perfectly happy for him to do so, as long as we get some of those lovely retweets. How about some of that? And I want to make sure you're heading over to thenationalpulse.com/support. That's where you can support us and support our work, support our investigation, support Natalie Winters, support the whole team over here. Want to make sure you're sticking around. America's Voice, got so much more coming up. We'll be back in a minute. Thanks, Bill.
All right, take care.